Older cyclists can get patellar pain and patellar tendonitis. They can get Achilles tendonitis. They can get hamstring tendonitis, high hamstring tendonitis, hip pain, IT band syndrome. I'm going to tell you exactly what to do about it, and it ain't going to cost you an arm and a leg or the cost of a bike. Now I'm going to cut to the chase, but in the end of the video, I'm going to tell you why I'm doing this right now. First, just so we're on the same page, tendons are connective tissue that connect muscle to bone. Tendons are a lot like ropes, that as the rope starts to untwine, then it starts to connect with muscle tissue, muscle cells. And then that rope then fuses into the bone. So it's simply a rope that connects the muscle to the bone. And it sucks when you get a tendon problem because it heals when you're young, but when you're old, it's no bueno. Now, tendon problems can be caused from a lot of different things, but mostly for us, it's caused by overdoing something, overtaxing what the tendon can handle. But when you exceed what that tendon's capacity is with the load, then you're screwed. In other words, sometimes our old tendons in our body cannot handle long distances with lots of climbing. There's another thing that's overlooked for a lot of people that people don't really talk about until they've had a tendon tear is antibiotics. Sometimes certain antibiotics can weaken our tendons. So if you got sick, you got an ear infection, you got a sinus infection or a UTI, and the doctor gave you something like Cipro or Levaquin, and then you recover from the sinus infection and then you go for a long ride, many people can tear their tendons or at best just develop tendon pain. I had this happen once. I went to a podiatrist and he gave me Cipro, and as I was driving home ready to fill the prescription, I was looking at the piece of paper going, did this guy just prescribe Cipro? And I called the office back and I said, hey, why did you prescribe Cipro? I'm a runner. Don't you know that this is a risk for tearing your Achilles tendon? And the doctor was like, well, if you don't want to take it, we can give you something else. And I was like, hell yeah, give me something else. So be very careful if you're taking Cipro or Levaquin. Another reason we can develop tendon pain is because our muscles can recover quicker than our tendons. So if you were to lift weights or you were to go for a long bike ride, your muscles will actually be able to recover quicker than the tendons. This is the reason why a lot of times you will see bodybuilders or powerlifters who are on steroids. They're doing TRT or something like that. It causes a high amount of protein synthesis to recover from working out. So their muscles will become super strong. Their muscles will become super recoverable so they can work out more frequently. But the tendons take a longer time, and steroids don't have a good effect on tendons. So this is where you see people doing bench press and they tear their pec or they tear their bicep. It's very common. So if you're on TRT, you want to be very careful with how you work out. So thus, the goal of this video is to show how to strengthen tendons so the tendons are super resilient, and that way it doesn't become a problem. All right, so I want you to think of tendons and tendon training as a certain type of algorithm, and this is what I do in my practice as a doctor of chiropractic. There are 4 ways of training tendons, and it goes from the easiest to the most difficult. Ultimately, the goal is to progress enough so that you're doing the most difficult to make your tendons the most resilient. But as we get older, sometimes it's very important to start at the beginning, even though you don't want to start at the beginning. We all think we're 20, but we're not. So let's talk about the first one, which are called isometrics. Isometric exercises are exercises where you're contracting a muscle pretty hard, about 70% of your maximum strength. And what happens in that case is there's no muscle movement and no joint movement. Once you've done isometrics, and I'm going to get into some details, I'm going to show you some exercises, particularly for cycling. But once you progress from isometrics, then the second step after that is to do slow eccentric movement. Now, what is an eccentric exercise or an eccentric movement? This is where you would lift a weight and then slowly lower it. The eccentric portion of an exercise is where you are lowering the weight. So the muscle is actually lengthening as there's pressure on it. The third step of the progression of strengthening tendons is then to do slow, heavy movements with the concentric and eccentric. So what this means, if you can imagine lifting a dumbbell with your bicep, the concentric movement would be lifting it up and the eccentric movement would be lowering it down. But to do it in a very slow fashion, we're talking 10 seconds up, 10 seconds down, so you're not doing it really fast. The fourth method of strengthening tendons, where you're progressing through this process to get the tendon strong, are ballistic movements. This is, for example, jumping rope, high box jumps, and jumping off a box onto the ground. This is where the guy on YouTube and Instagram, the knee over toes guy, he'll jump off a ladder 6 feet off the ground, land on the ground, and like a kangaroo just jump super high after that. That's called a ballistic movement. So a ballistic exercise would be where there's a sudden movement where the muscle has to essentially eccentric go fast and concentric fast. And so that's a lot of strain on the tendon. So you want to progress up to that if you can, of course, depending on our age. Just remember, we're not 20. You can't train like a 20-year-old athlete and expect to have the same benefits. So in this video, I'm going to focus on isometrics, one of the most overlooked type of exercises to strengthen tendons, and it works really, really well. There are 4 key benefits of isometrics, particularly for us, the aging athlete. Number 1, isometrics do not cause muscle soreness. So this is something that literally can be done every single day if needed. And the reason why they don't is because largely the soreness, the DOMS, is a result of the eccentric movement of an activity. So if you really want to get sore in an exercise, you would lower the weight down. This is a strategy used for bodybuilders to increase hypertrophy. But in this particular case, we're not trying to make muscles bigger. We're trying to make tendons more resilient. So it's a totally different exercise. But this is a benefit because if you want to ride, you could literally do isometrics on a Friday and go cycling on a Saturday, and it doesn't have any ill effects. The second benefit for isometrics is you don't have to do a lot of exercise to stimulate the stiffness and the benefits that you're looking for in a tendon. It takes actually about 3 minutes of work, which is about how much time we want to work at isometrics. You know what I'm talking about? The third benefit is that isometrics are pain-free. There's no lactate or lactic acid, that burning sensation that you get when you're really cranking out the reps. This doesn't occur in isometrics. The fourth benefit is the awesome one, is that isometric exercises can help reduce pain in a tendon. So if you're already suffering from a tendinopathy, tendon pain, you're suffering from tendonitis, isometrics can actually reduce the pain. All right, smarty pants. So if isometrics are so great, what are the disadvantages? Number 1, nobody's going to get buff with isometrics. If you want to create hypertrophy, a large muscle, then you're going to have to go through a range of motion. Isometrics simply do not make people buff. You're probably old enough to remember Bruce Lee. Remember that little tiny guy? Remember how powerful he was with the 1-inch punch? Well, you want to be like a Bruce Lee, not a Lee Haney. Here's a second disadvantage, and this is a big one. Unfortunately, there's no real way to measure isometrics. We all know this. There's nothing more satisfying than having numbers. So if you can do a bicep curl of 25 pounds, and then after a period of time, now you can do a bicep curl of 35 pounds, there's a measurable way to progress and to know that you're actually improving. With isometrics, there's really no way to improve. Now, I did get this thing. Where is it here? There's this thing called a Dragon Door Isometric Max. This is pretty cool. It actually measures how much you are putting pressure on. So how many pounds of pressure. So you could do an isometric and lift, and you're lifting, let's say, 60 pounds of pressure. But that's not practical for what we're trying to achieve here in this video for cycling. Number 3, you're not going through a full range of motion. So when you do an isometric exercise, you are getting strength and strengthening the tendon in that particular position. Now you can expand positions, but you're not going through a full range of motion. This is actually a disadvantage, but it's also an advantage. So if you have joint pain, a lot of times, for example, patients that have too much joint pain in a knee or an ankle, you can do isometrics. And then what the research has shown that is that when you do an isometrics in this position, there's a 15% or 15-degree angle this way and a 15-degree angle this way where you are gaining strength. So if you're in a particular position with your legs, you are gaining strength in about a 30-degree range of motion. Fourth disadvantage is you'll never gain as much strength doing isometrics as you will lifting weights. But the problem is that would you want to lift weights if you were hurting all the time, or do you want to do isometrics and solve the tendon pain so you can ride your bike? So let's get into exercise number 1, and this is for the tendons around the patella or your kneecap. All right, so what you're going to need is you're going to need a phone and you're going to have a stopwatch. And what's going to happen is you are going to, for all the isometric exercise I'm going to show you right now, you just simply hit the button and you're going to do the exercise for 30 seconds, take 30 seconds off, then exercise again for 30 seconds, 30 seconds off, and you're going to do it for 6 repetitions, which means 5.5 minutes. You'll figure it out. You're smart. The first exercise is a sissy squat. You're going to need to be near something for balance. So I'm going to use my weight bench here. And you're going to put your feet shoulder width apart. You're going to get up on your toes. And then there's no right way to say this without sounding not politically correct. But you're going to squeeze your butt cheeks together. And then what you're going to do is you're going to do what's called a posterior pelvic rotation. So you're going to imagine your belly is out like this with an arch in your back. And you're going to suck your belly in so that your pelvis rotates back like this. So you're like a hyena. So you're rounding your spine. What you're going to do is you're going to get up on your toes, you're going to squeeze your butt cheeks together and rotate your pelvis back. Then what you want to do is you want to get your knees about 90 degrees. You're just going to lean back so your body is straight like this so that your knee here is 90 degrees. You will hold this position for about 30 seconds. 30 seconds is the optimal amount. Then when you come up, you will rest for 30 seconds and then do 6 repetitions. So on your toes, squeeze your butt cheeks, rotate your pelvis back, lean back to 90 degrees and hold this position. Now here's the thing. Some people are going to have trouble with this. And the angle of the knee is going to dictate how much strain is on your knee. Now, if you get into this position and you find that it's too much pain on your knee, then you'll simply not go down as deep. If you have a little bit of pain on a scale of 1 to 10, so that the pain is under a 3, then that's acceptable. You'll find that as the reps go on, the pain will decrease. And especially if you do this 3 times, 4 times a week, you'll start noticing that your pain will decrease in your tendon. Now there's another way to do this. There's many ways, of course. And what I have in my garage here is a weight bench that I bought from a gym that was going out of business. So this is a hardcore leg curl and leg extension machine. And what you can do to do isometrics is you could feasibly tie this together so that what'll happen, let me show you here, use this knee extension and then lean back a little and then press, and that would create isometric tension on the patellar tendon as well. The reason I don't like this is because what happens in this particular case is that you're seated and so your hips are in flexion. There's a muscle in the front of your thigh called a rectus femoris. It's part of your quadriceps. And so when you do a sissy squat, you're doing that muscle as well, which is a primary hip flexor as well as a knee extender. And I find that that seems to work best if a person is able to do it. But you could certainly do this in a gym. You could load the weight high enough to where you can only do an isometric exercise. and that's very feasible when it comes to the knee. The second exercise is for hamstring tendonitis, where you get pain on particularly the outside. Most cyclists will get it from the outside, but many people will get it on the inside and get inner knee pain. And this is also really good for high hamstring tendinopathy. I probably should have mentioned it in the beginning, but you're a smart guy. So if you don't know what these things are, then you don't have them. But if you do have them, you probably Googled these and watched a lot of videos. But high hamstring tendonitis is right where the sit bone is, where you sit on the saddle. And people have gotten tendinopathies there, tendinitises. I've gotten it too. And this is literally what solved it. So what you do here is it's going to look like a bridge, but we're going to do it in a different way. This is a very popular exercise. Here, you'll see people coming up like this, and they're trying to strengthen their butt. Here's the problem. That looks good for Instagram and stuff, but we're trying to actually use the hamstring. So the specific way that you're going to do this is you're going to lie on your back, obviously, and you're going to posteriorly rotate your pelvis. Now, what that means is you should be flattening your back against the ground when you do this. Now, what'll happen is when you come up like this, you want to keep your pelvis posteriorly rotated as much as possible, but you're not going to have your feet flat on the ground. You're going to actually bring your toes up, and you're going to be digging the heels into the ground, but not just into the ground, but you're going to be trying to pull your heels towards your butt. That will activate the hamstring muscle and put a lot of tension on the hamstring tendons on both ends. So if you do this right, what will happen is when you get up here, you will feel as though if you're pulling on your heels enough, you will feel yourself dragging yourself this way. But what you're going to do is you're going to angle it such that you cannot pull your torso on the ground. It'd be nice to also do this on a ground that's not super slippery. But if you do this exercise, posteriorly rotate your pelvis, you come up, you dig your heels into the ground and pull towards your butt. If you're not feeling any discomfort when you do that, then what you'll do, and this is the progression, is you will start to do this so that your legs are farther away. Still doing the same thing, rotating your pelvis, getting up into a bridge, and then trying to pull yourself this way. The longer distance you are getting, the more hamstring involvement that you're going to get. All right, so now these next exercises, you're going to need some type of cord like this. I'll put links down below in the description of where I got these on Amazon. But to be honest, you could use just a simple belt that you have. You don't necessarily need these. These are just a little more comfortable because a belt is super thin. These will be a little bit more protective on your muscles. This is for IT band syndrome, hip bursitis, hip tendonitis, weakness of the hips. If you find that you're cycling when you ride, you get a lot of tension on the side of the hips, or back pain, or IT band syndrome on the sides, this is a very good exercise for that. Of course, this is assuming that every time you do a video like this, everybody in the comment section says get a bike fit, but I'm assuming that your bike fits you and that's not this culprit. A lot of times with problems that people have, it's not necessarily the bike fit, it's you. It's me. It's the weakness that we have. It's the capacity of the tendons to withstand the forces that we're putting on it. And it doesn't matter how many bike fits you get. If the muscle is weak and the tendon can't handle the load, if you go out and overdo it, game over. Or like I said in the beginning, if you take an antibiotic and that weakens the tendon and you get tendon problems, a bike fit isn't going to fix the damage from the antibiotic. So what you do is you take one of these and you're going to put it around the outer thigh. You want to make sure and sit up straight and kind of stick the belly out and lean forward a little bit like this. And what you'll do is you're going to take your thighs and pull them apart this way. This band, of course, restricts that, and at a certain point you will be unable to push any farther. So you get into almost like a bicycle position, and then you bring them apart as much as you possibly can and hold this position for about 30 seconds for 6 repetitions. And this looks stupid, but I'll tell you, after 6 repetitions, you'll be surprised how much you'll feel just more stability in your hips. All right, so the last exercise is for the Achilles tendon. And I'm gonna set up the camera and show you how to do this. I'm not gonna use weights, but for most people, you're gonna need to be holding a dumbbell to add load to it. So what you need is some type of step. You could do this off any step. I'm gonna use this one here. For most people, you gotta do this one leg at a time so that there's a high amount of load. You will get into a position here where you let the foot go down, and then you just come up an inch and just hold this position for 30 seconds. That's how you do an isometric, and because the tendon is very strong, the Achilles tendon, you'll need to have some type of dumbbell or something where you hold on to it with one arm, and that way you can add load to that. But that, where the heel is dropped just an inch away from its maximal length, is a great way to help Achilles tendonitis. For most people, you're going to be doing these exercises because you have a problem. If you don't have any problems, then the question is, why would you do this? Well, for one, it's preventative. The same thing that cures a problem is very often good for prevention. And let's face it, the reality is some people are just genetically gifted. Some people have thicker tendons, some people have shorter tendons, some people have wider tendons, and this plays a role in the strength of the tendon. In addition to that, some people are young and they just don't have these problems. But if your tendon is 50, 60, 70 years old, it may need some work. And you want to be patient with this because tendons have a slower healing time than other tissues because their metabolism is slower and there's less blood supply getting to a tendon than, for example, getting to a muscle. There are some other things that can help with tendon recovery. First of all, gelatin or collagen supplements can be beneficial. If you take that along with vitamin C, that's been shown in the research to help with tendon. A lot of times people are applying ice to tendons that are swollen, and that may help initially, just reducing pain. But for the long run, you want to add heat because you want to get more circulation and more blood supply. If you can get more blood supply to a tendon and increase its metabolic rate, then you're going to speed up healing. I'm fortunate that I have laser therapy in my office, so when patients come in with this, or I develop it, you can apply laser therapy. Cold laser therapy that's a class 4 laser is really the only one that's going to be super beneficial for tendon problems. And lastly, if you can take it, Graston technique, which is a chiropractic method where you use specialized instruments to slightly damage the tendon so it stimulates growth. That, along with shockwave, I've found has been very beneficial in helping tendon problems heal quickly. As you get stronger, remember the algorithm. Once you get to a point where you can do these isometrics and they're pain-free, after about 6 weeks, you start losing effectiveness. So then you can start progressing into the slow eccentric movements, then the heavy slow movements, and then eventually ballistic movements. But for a lot of people, as we age, isometrics are really all you need. One of the disadvantages of eccentric movements are it creates a lot of soreness. The second thing is what happens is some people just don't tolerate it very well. And then for super slow, heavy movements with heavy weights, of course, that's beneficial to increase strength. But for a lot of people, as we age, it's too much pressure on the joints, so they start getting joint pain. And then ballistic exercises, which you see a lot of people doing, particularly on the internet, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, a lot of times these are very young people, and their tendons are already strong. For many people, they actually end up tearing tendons, which is just not a situation you want to be in. So be very careful with ballistic movements. And it's for this reason isometric exercises are extremely safe. So it sounds like I'm selling you on isometric exercises, right? Yes. The reason why, and why am I doing them right now instead of riding my bike? Because I am screwed. You're not going to believe this. But I've had a problem in my shoulder for about 6 years, and I developed calcium inside a particular muscle in my rotator cuff. No big deal, I got away with it. It bothered me at times, but I just, for this reason, or this season, I just noticed that it was kind of bothering me a little bit, and I decided I was just going to do something about it finally. And so I went to a doctor and had a procedure where he went in there and took the calcium out. Well, guess what? It's been about a week. Let me show you something. This is my range of motion. That's abduction. That's all I have. And flexion, it's not working really well. I can kind of force it. That's how much my shoulder moves. This wasn't supposed to happen. So I'm not riding my bike right now. And normally I can do weightlifting. So normally I'll do goblet squats with, I have a 50-pound dumbbell. I can't lift the dumbbell. I'm screwed. So this is going to get better, but my philosophy is if you can't do something, then figure out what you can do and make that a strength. So I'm using this time right now where I can't get on a bike to just strengthen my tendons. So by the time I get back on the bike, I don't have weak tendons. And this is going to happen as we get older, is we're going to accumulate stuff, and we're going to have injuries, and we're going to get sicknesses, and parts aren't going to work. So my take on it is if a shoulder doesn't work, work the legs. If the legs don't work, work the arms. But I'm going nuts. I want to ride my bike, and it is just a beautiful day out there, and I'm jealous of all my friends that get to ride. But I'll be back. But hopefully this was an informative video for you. Strengthening tendons is an important thing as we get older, as you know, because if you've got tendon problems, you'll find that they just become chronic and they just kind of never go away. But isometrics have been a valuable thing for myself in my practice, getting people better and trying to help get you so that you can get out there and do the hobbies you want to do. So